Hey guys, how's it going? Drylag here again, coming back at you with another video. Today I wanted to take the information from my previous video as well as some new information that I wanted to present to you in this one and show you how to theorycraft your whole build from start to finish and take that information and be able to incorporate it to any skill gem, any class, and be able to decide what you want to do with the build, what you want it to accomplish, take the information from the skill gems and show you how to decide what classes and ascendancies would best benefit that skill gem and show you how you can tweak your idea in order to make something that would be playable in game. But first, before I get into today's video, I'd like to say a huge thank you to everybody for the response on my last one. It means more to me than I could ever say. And along with that, I'd like to acknowledge the sponsor of today's video, Ray. Whoa, hold your horses there, boy. You can't be saying that now. Ain't nobody sponsoring us yet. Yes, I know you're right. Even though it's hotter than two rats screwing in a wool sock in here, ain't nobody sponsoring us yet. You making fun of me, boy? Oh, I wasn't making fun of you. I was just simply trying to get back to the video. Well, you can hold your horses for a second there, cowboy. Alright, if you'd like to help this yeller-bellied liver sniffer out and encourage him to keep making content like this, make sure if you get anything out of today's video to hit that like and subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated. Come join our community. Alright, so now that he's gone, I'd like to go over a little more information and add to my previous video and show you how to take a skill, read the information from the skill, and be able to theorycraft your own build, and show you a few other things that I wasn't able to include in my previous one. I don't want to go over too much of the same information. There may be a little bit of overlap, but I do want to try and address a few things that I wasn't able to include in the other video without making it too long. So let's say, for example, you've already gotten a character, or you're just starting a new character and you're trying to decide what build you're going to use. If you've already got a skill in mind that you want to use to theorycraft around, how do you use the information from the skill gem itself to determine what classes and what ascendancies will benefit that skill the most? So we want to start with ethereal knives. It's actually what I'm going to theorycraft here because that is what my original build was. So if you look at the top of the skill gem here, you can see types of damage modifiers that will affect the skill. This particular skill is going to be affected by spell damage, projectile damage, physical damage, and anything that modifies the duration of the skill. And once you've picked the skill that you want to build around and theorycraft around, you can actually enter it into Path of Building here by entering the Skills tab, hitting New, and one useful piece of information that you can use is setting your default gem level and quality level to 20 and 20. This is going to give you the best idea of what the skill is capable of once your build is completed. And as you can see, once I enter that skill here, my up if I could type, and I hit enter, it automatically sets the level of the gem and the quality at level 20. Alright, so once you've got your skill selected and you've gotten into Path of Building, you're getting ready to theorycraft your build, you want to decide what class and ascendancy you want to go with in order to make the most use of the skill. For this example, I want to use a Marauder because I want to scale the physical damage portion of ethereal knives, and I want to convert that damage into fire damage. In order to change your class, you click on this tab up here, you scroll down to the class that you want to use, and then you can also pick your ascendancy, which for what my purposes, the chieftain is going to be very great for this. And you can set an example level. For me, I want to go with a level 93 theory crafting because that is a level that most people can obtain within a league. Now, after you've chosen your class and ascendancy, if you are looking for ideal keystones that are going to help with your theory crafting idea, you can save the build up here, and then you can open a new build by clicking this button here. In this example, I actually already have a reference build right here that is going to be very similar to what I'm trying to do, although not exact, but it will give me a baseline for the nodes that I'm going to be going for. So Avatar of Fire is one of them, for sure. And then there's a lot of elemental damage nodes up here that I can take advantage of, as well as up here for the fire damage. But I do want to use these aura effect nodes, as well as the reservation efficiency nodes, in order to apply the heralds and the aura that I'm looking to use. So with that in mind, I'm going to go back to my build. I already know the idea that I want to go with, so I want to show you how to kind of go about fast tracking your build a little bit. So say for example, you already know you want to travel down to Warrior's Blood. If you just click this, path building is going to help you out. Go ahead and allocate the nodes leading up to that are the most efficient. So this is going to be the shortest route traveled. However, we don't want those nodes. We actually want to come down through the life and armor nodes here, and then pick up Warrior's Blood. Then we want to travel up to Heart of the Warrior and Born to Fight. So if we just travel up here and click on that, we can allocate all that in one shot. And then we want to come up through here because we are going to want to pick up these armor and stamina nodes. But we're going to go ahead and start pathing over to Arsonist here. And we also want to pick up Magmatic Strikes. And then we can use the Mastery here, the Fire Mastery, for increased fire damage per 20 strength. Since we are a Marauder, we're going to be stacking a lot of strength. We also want Avatar of Fire, we know that. So then we can start pathing down here. And we do know that we want to use Call to Arms, because we're going to be using Enduring Cry to help with our survivability. And then we can pick up this Life Will here, as well as the Life Mastery for 50 maximum life. And then I do know that I also personally want to go with these aura nodes here for more reservation efficiency, and we can pick up the Mastery for even more. Now, I'm also going to be stacking endurance charges, so while I'm in this area, I know I want to pick up the endurance charge here, and I can pick up that jewel socket as well. I also know I'm going to be pathing over to the life wheel here for this node and this node. The reason why I'm picking up the Path of the Warrior is because it also gives increased physical damage as well, plus some more armor and strength. And the physical damage, even though we're converting all of our damage into fire damage, the physical damage is also a additional damage increase because of the fact that Ethereal Knives does physical damage initially. The way damage scaling works and damage conversion works in this game is if you are converting damage types, it actually goes in an order of precedence, which I believe, if I remember correctly off of the top of my head, is physical damage. Then it looks at lightning damage if you're converting any damage into lightning. Then it looks into if you're converting any damage into cold. And then if you're looking into converting any damage into fire. And then any damage into chaos. It goes in that order to prevent being able to double dip, essentially, or create an infinite damage loop. So you can't scale your damage infinitely by doing conversion. However, in this particular case, because I'm only converting 2 fire damage, I do want to pick up as much physical damage as I can, and then that also gets converted into fire damage. So then any multipliers for fire damage or anything like that get scaled based on the physical damage that I had at the end of any physical calculations. So this node does apply, excuse me, as well as Born to Fight here. So I do get those physical damage increases first, and then it converts to fire damage, and then that fire damage gets scaled. So then I do also want to pick up the life regeneration up here, because I'm also going to be using Righteous Fire to scale the spell damage from Ethereal Knives. So I do want to have some life regen in order to be able to survive the Righteous Fire. And because of how I'm going to be doing this build, I do want the Hardy node here, And I do want to come down and pick up barbarism as well. For the increased maximum fire resistance. Again, I'm also picking up the endurance charge here, as well as this jewel socket for 1 point. And then I'm going to pick up the chance to ignite, because we will be scaling ignite damage, and then divine judgment for the increased elemental damage. Then I'm also going to pick up the extra physical damage as extra fire damage, and damage penetrates 5 fire resistance. Now in this notable here, so we're scaling a little bit of our physical damage first. Then we're gaining an additional 5% of the physical damage as extra fire damage. That's different than converting physical damage to fire damage. So in this particular case, we're getting an extra 5% of our physical damage as extra fire damage, and then converting all physical damage to fire damage. So that is basically a 5% increase damage overall. And then we scale that damage as well through the elemental damage increases through divine judgment and a few other notes we're going to pick up along the way. Now, I do also want to come back up, pick up a little more life here. And then I can pick up the life mastery here for the 10% increased maximum life. Then I do also want to pick up these reservation efficiency nodes and sovereignty here. And then you can also pick up the life reservation efficiency, since I am going to be scaling or putting some auras on my life as well using arrogance. Another node that we're going to end up picking up is the agnostic as of right now, but that is going to change later, and I will show you that in a little bit here. And then we're going to continue up here for these fire damage nodes up here. And because I'm going to be scaling the ignite damage as well, these fire damage over time multipliers are actually beneficial to pick up as well. Then you can pick up the fire mastery for damage over time multiplier. Now, there is also the mastery for 40% of physical damage converted to fire damage, but we're already going to be converting 100% of our fire physical damage to fire damage. So this actually provides no benefit. So I'd rather go for the fire over time multiplier, and then I can pick up a couple more life notes here. And since we're building around reaching level 93, we can actually go all the way up to 117 skill points. So I will be adding a few more points here for survivability by picking up the increased armor and increased life here. And then I believe I was going for relentless, yes. So this is some more physical damage scaling here. And then you can play around with your points a little bit. You've still got a few points left, so I'm going to pick up the increased armor here, and I believe I'm going to stop there. Even though I'm theory crafting all the way up to level 93, I can play around with more points later on. However, this is a really good starting point. We've got a pretty solid build planned out already without even any gear equipped. So now one thing you can see right off of the bat is we are considerably short on the dexterity requirements that we're going to need. So since we do have some extra points that we can play around with, we can go ahead and pick up this expertise node here temporarily, as well as the proficiency node here temporarily. We're still a little bit short, but it gives us a good idea of what we're going to need to do gear-wise in order to meet the requirements that we have. So we are going to go back to our skills real quick and go back over the supports that we're going to want to use. And then we're going to also add in the auras and everything else on top of that we're going to want to do. So one nice thing about path building is when you're planning out or theory crafting a build, it'll automatically put the highest DPS supports up near the top. However, I want this to play a little bit differently than what Path of Building is recommending as the highest DPS. Obviously, I don't want to cast Ethereal Knives on Death, so I'm not going to go with that support here. But we will go with the added fire damage, and I'm going to do the regular ones instead of the awakened ones, because that's a better starting point, because the regular support gems are going to be much easier to acquire than the awakened support gems. So we're going to go ahead and go with added fire damage, because that is one that I do know that I'm going to want to use. And then the reason why I want to use this is because it also gives 39% of physical damage as extra fire damage. And then I do want to go with Spell Echo, which is not up top here. There it is. Spell Echo. And then we'll go with, I believe I wanted to use Cruelty, and then so we've got two more supports that we can add in. Fire Penetration is a good option. Yeah, we'll go ahead and go with Fire Pen, and then I wanted to go with Combustion as well. So already our total DPS is looking okay-ish, you know, for not having any gear and not having any auras. Actually, I just realized I went with the Awakened Fire Penetration instead of regular Fire Penetration. Alright, so now we want to plan out some auras. And because of what I know I'm going to do defensively, just based on experience, I do want to make sure that I add in Purity of Fire. That is going to be the one aura that we're actually using. And then everything else is going to be Herald. So we are going to use Herald of Purity, because this will scale the physical damage portion of the ability. And then we'll use Herald of Ash as well to scale the fire damage. And then we're going to use Arctic Armor as well. And those auras, yeah, those auras all fit on our mana. And we're going to use a couple of auras on life as well. So we're actually going to fit Vitality with Arrogance. Okay, so on top of that, we also want to have Vitality with Arrogance. We're also going to put Arctic Armor on our life. So as you can see, our unreserved life is 57%. We're also going to fit in, actually I messed up. The Arctic Armor here should actually be Petrified Blood. And then on top of that, we want to have some mobility. So we're going to use Flame Dash, linked with Arcane Surge. We actually want to keep that one low level. So we're going to plan it out at level 1. That way every time we proc Flame Dash, we're proccing Arcane Surge as well. And on top of that, we want to use Righteous Fire. And then with that, we want to also add in something that's going to help with cursing. Alright, so to help with cursing, we actually want to use Flammability. And then we're going to use Hex Touch to link it with another skill. We're going to use Flamethrower Trap and Combustion. And then if you want to see what your full DPS with everything is going to be, you can do include in full DPS here. And here, we're already looking at about 123,000 DPS without any gear. Now let's work on our gear a little bit. If you click on the items tab up here, you have all these gear slots open. One thing you can do if you just want a base idea is you can craft an item. Let's say, for example, we want to go ahead and craft a wand that we're going to plan on using. You can scroll down, pick out the type of wand that you want to use. We don't want a Convoking wand because we're not looking for minion modifiers. We're actually looking for spell damage modifier. So while we're here, we're going to go back and we're going to edit something because I kind of messed up and I just realized it. So the wand that we chose has a really high intelligence requirement, and that's going to be a little hard for us to attain with this build. So we're actually going to look for something a little bit lower. We'll go with an engraved wand. Create that. We'll add in some spell damage. Spell skill gems. Physical spell skill gems. Some damage over time multiplier. Some fire damage over time multiplier. And the projectile speed as soon as I find that. There it is. Okay. So now this is the same wand that we had, except for less cast speed. There we go. Now we're looking better. Okay, in this slot here, you can actually use rare templates, which will give you some very basic rare items that you can just fill in slots with. But we're going to use this for the uniques. There's a lot of filters here that you can use, but I already know the items that I'm going to be looking for as far as uniques go. Which the chest that I'm going to want to use is the brass stone. This will give us some maximum fire resistance, so you can either double click it and add to build, or you can click and drag it and put it into the chest slot there. And then the other unique that I'm going to want to use is going to be the leadership's price. Oops. There it is. Leadership's price. All right. For some more maximum fire resistance. And then the last unique item that I'm going to want to use is going to be Dawnbreaker. There will be a couple of unique jewels that we'll use too to accomplish the rest of our goal. But this gives us our gear going. Actually, I lied. There's going to be 2 unique rings as well. But I'm going to use some actual in-game gear to show you guys another little feature of path building here. Then one thing I did not do is I didn't do my Ascendancy points. So we're going to go back here and we're going to go ahead and fill these in. So I do know that I want the Storm's Embrace for more life regen per endurance charge. I also want Tassalio's Cleansing Water for the fire resistance. And then some physical damage from hits taken as fire damage will also increase our survivability a bit. And then we're going to go over here and pick up Ngamuhu's the Flames Advance to get the 100% physical to fire conversion. Then we're also going to pick up Hinakura's Death's Fury for some fire damage leached his life to help our survivability a bit. And as you can see, we're starting to look pretty good. Right now we're at 83% fire resistance. We're able to sustain Righteous Fire. The total net regen here shows us that we are in the positive on our life regen. Then we're looking at pretty decent damage. One thing that we have not changed, if you want to see how your build is going to perform on a boss, you can pick Standard Boss, which will show you a little bit of a DPS decrease. We're down to about 167,000 DPS with this build right now. And then you can also do your Guardian and your Pinnacle bosses, or Uber Pinnacle bosses. Now those, with a build like this, you're not going to be doing those anytime soon. Not on this gear. So we're going to look at the standard boss and plan around beating the standard mount bosses and stuff like that. So we will have our endurance charges, and right now we're still looking pretty good. 181,000 damage per second is not the worst. It's not the best build ever as of right now, but it's still doing pretty decent. So another thing that we want to do is we do want to add in a few gems. And we also want to add in our rings, because as you remember, we're still missing our rings here. So here we are in the game, and the rings that we want to use are actually going to be Circle of Guilts. Now, finding them with the exact Herald of Purity buffs and everything like that in the path of building is not going to happen. So if you go into path building and you type in Circle of Guilt, the only option it gives you is with 4% additional physical damage reduction while affected by Herald of Purity. However, the ones that we want are actually going to have the increased buff effect for Herald of Purity, as well as the increased physical damage while affected by Herald of Purity. So what you can do, and I actually forgot to do it, is you can hover your mouse over the ring that you're wanting to copy, and we'll actually end up copying both of these. But you can hover over the ring that you want to copy and hit Control C, and you won't see anything happen right away, but you can go back over here and click on Create Custom and hit Control V, and as you can see, item class rings, rarity unique, Circle of Guilt, then it'll have everything in here, such as the Herald of Purity with buff effect and the physical damage while affected by Herald of Purity. You just click the Create button. Now you have a copy of that. You can add it to your build, and then we can go back and do the same thing with the other ring. So this is an easy way to copy and paste specific pieces of gear that you want in your build. And then say, for example, you want a jewel for one of your sockets that you don't have filled in yet. You can also do that from Path of Building. I do have an example saved here that I want to use. And we're going to use this Lethal Pride here. Because finding one, again, through Path of Building with the exact stats you're looking for is not easy to do. So we're going to type in like Lethal Pride here. You're only given one option. So if you've already got a build with the exact Lethal Pride that you're looking for, you can go in here, find the jewel, and double click on it. Now you've got this. You can click on Edit. This will give you the exact jewel that you have, and you can just copy and paste this to your other build. Same thing, create custom, copy and paste. Then you can create that and add it to your build. We can put that in the socket here. Now that has actually changed our skill up here. Instead of the agnostic, you now have tempered by war, which converts all of the cold, 50% of the cold and lightning damage you take as fire damage. Then we're going to do the same thing again, which I actually have a couple of jewels already copy and pasted here. Then we have one more jewel that we want to put in as well, which is the Sublime Vision up here. This gives you another 30% of cold and lightning damage taken as fire damage, and it also makes it so you can only use Purity of Fire as an aura. Now that's different from using heralds, because heralds are not auras. So you can still stack the heralds in as well. Add that to the build. Sublime Vision. And there we go. Now we're looking a bit tankier. Starting to look pretty decent. And if we go back to the tree here, you can see the jewels are in jewel sockets here. Now the Lethal Pride does need to be up here, just so it does affect this tempered by war. So as you can see, it's really easy to theorycraft your build using Path of Building by being able to copy and paste specific items of gear from Path of Exile itself into Path of Building, as well as using somebody's template and copying and pasting their gear from their template into yours to see how their gear would affect your theory-crafted build. And all that being said, we're actually in a really good spot right now as far as a starting point for a build. This build's going to be able to push pretty decently into maps. I would be willing to say that it's going to be able to push into high yellow maps, possibly low red maps. It would still need some tweaking to be a little more consistent in high red maps, but damage wise you would be able to push very well into maps. Survivability wise, if you know what you're doing, you can probably do pretty well just as is. If you're a little more inconsistent, you take a few hits here and there, as of right now you would want to play around with tweaking some of your survivability a little bit. But you can change a lot with taking some points out, moving them into cluster jewels, things like that, which is something that I get into in a more advanced video. Right now, I just want to give you guys a baseline of being able to create your own builds. And if I accomplish that goal, you can always show your appreciation by clicking this link here. It'll take you right to the subscribe button. And if you haven't seen my previous video that I mentioned in this one, you can watch that here, and you can click that link now.